The story begins inside a quiet orbital classroom drifting above the gas giant Karos 9, a place where the Galactic Academy trains future leaders of many alien races, and while the room looks calm, there is tension hanging in the air because humans are new to this academy and most species do not trust them, believing Earth is a cursed death world where only violence creates survivors. And among the students sits Mara Hale, a young human cadet who keeps her head low and her voice quiet, wearing a simple uniform with no strength boosters or weapons, appearing small beside towering aliens with claws, scales, and armored skin, while whispers spread across the room and strange eyes study her like she is a mistake allowed inside by accident. And the instructor, a massive four-armed Threxian named Verkesh, begins a lesson about combat limits of weaker species, speaking in a cold and official tone that feels less like teaching and more like judgment, causing several students to turn toward Mara with smirks and low laughter until a brawl cadet named Crack stands up, a creature built for war with stone-hard skin and muscles grown in combat vats, known for his species' brutal history of conquest, and he loudly asks permission to demonstrate, knowing very well who he plans to use as his example, and although the instructor hesitates, the room's hunger for spectacle pushes him to allow it, and Krax walks toward Mara with heavy steps, mocking her openly and calling her a Deathworlder as if it is an insult, while she looks up at him without fear or anger, only calm focus, which annoys him even more. And before anyone can stop it, Krax swings his massive fist and strikes her across the face, the sound sharp and violent, echoing through the classroom as Mara is thrown from her chair and crashes to the floor, shocking many students who expected tears or surrender. And for a moment there is confusion, fear, and silence as some wonder if the fragile human has been seriously hurt. But then time seems to slow as Mara pushes herself up from the floor, blood running from her lip, her body aching yet steady, her eyes sharp and clear. And something changes in the air, something heavy and unsettling. Because she does not cry or beg her back away, instead she stands fully, wipes the blood from her mouth, and speaks softly, warning Krax that he made a mistake, a warning he laughs at because he believes size and strength decide everything. And as he raises his fist again, Mara moves first, not with wild anger but with practiced control, stepping into his reach and striking his throat with a quick, precise motion that steals his breath, then twisting her body and driving her elbow into his jaw with full force, the crack of bone shocking the room as Krax stumbles backward, stunned, and before he can recover, Mara hooks her leg behind his knee and uses gravity, weight, and balance to slam him down onto the reinforced floor so hard that it fractures beneath them, showing everyone that human strength does not come from size but from understanding force. And the once fearsome brawl warrior screams in pain, helpless and broken, while Mara stands over him, breathing hard but controlled, leaning close and explaining in a calm voice that on Earth, these lessons are taught early, because humans grow up learning how to survive against larger, stronger threats every day. And with one final controlled strike, she ends the fight completely, leaving Krax unconscious and unmoving. And the classroom falls into absolute silence as students stare in disbelief, the instructor frozen and unable to speak, because in just a few seconds everything they believed about humans has been shattered. And Mara straightens her uniform, ignoring the pain in her body, and calmly returns to her place as if nothing important happened. But everyone in that room knows something historic has just occurred, because they did not witness a simple fight. They witnessed the moment the galaxy took its first real step toward fearing humanity, realizing that Deathworlders are quiet not because they are weak, but because they are always ready. After Mara's stunning display in the classroom, news of her fight spread like wildfire across the Galactic Academy and quickly reached every corner of the galaxy, sparking outrage, disbelief, and fear among powerful alien civilizations, especially the Brawl Dominion, who viewed her actions not as self-defense but as unprovoked aggression from a supposedly weak species, and immediately demanded that humanity be punished, presenting their case to the Galactic Council and framing it as a threat to peace. While most other alien powers watched with a mix of curiosity and condescension, certain that humans would soon be crushed under the weight of their own inexperience. For the galaxy had long considered humanity fragile, small, and incapable of serious combat. But what they did not understand was that humans had been forged in environments far deadlier than anything the aliens had known, surviving storms, predators, and crushing gravitational forces that shaped their bodies and minds to endure the impossible. And now the test of that endurance was about to begin on a scale that went far beyond any classroom demonstration. Within days, massive Brawl warships entered human-controlled space, their dark, angular hulls glinting in distant starlight, engines humming with a deep, menacing resonance that signaled the start of a conflict that would make the fight in the classroom seem like a child's game. And the humans, far outnumbered and technologically outmatched, were forced to rally with limited fleets and hastily armed colonies, their ships smaller and less powerful, their soldiers inexperienced in interstellar warfare on this scale. Yet they did not cower, for survival was ingrained into their nature. And even in the face of overwhelming odds, every human knew that retreat was not an option. Mara found herself on the bridge of the UNS Iron Resolve, a human battlecruiser that was part ingenuity, part desperation, and entirely human, where Admiral Reyes briefed the crew calmly about the incoming Brawl fleet, noting that their enemy outnumbered them 4-1. And while the odds seemed hopeless, the human crews moved with quiet determination, knowing that their lives and the fate of their colonies depended on their ability to fight smarter, faster, and more ruthlessly than the Brawl expected. Using strategy and cunning over brute force, and Mara, now recognized as a symbol of human resilience, was assigned to lead a boarding team, a job that demanded skill, precision, and nerves of steel, as the team would be sent onto the hulls of enemy ships to disable systems, sabotage engines, and confront Brawl warriors in zero-gravity combat, an environment designed to favor the stronger, larger species, yet perfect for humans who had learned to turn disadvantages into weapons. As the battle began, the stars around them were filled with fire and movement, laser beams cutting through the void while missiles streaked in arcs of blue and red. And the human fleet moved unpredictably, drifting in silence only to strike suddenly, exploiting angles, debris, and gravity wells in ways the Brawl had never imagined. While Mara led her team through corridors of alien ships, using every wall, ceiling, and floor as a weapon, smashing through doors, disabling control panels, and confronting towering Brawl soldiers with nothing but their own bodies and the simple, lethal techniques honed from Deathworld survival training, a style of combat that relied on balance, momentum, and precise strikes rather than raw strength, which shocked every alien they encountered and gave the humans an unexpected advantage despite being outnumbered. Throughout these engagements, Mara faced moments that tested her physically and emotionally, as civilians and cadets alike ran through corridors threatened by fire and explosions, forcing her to make split-second decisions to save lives while still completing her mission, showing that humanity's strength was not only in combat but in ingenuity, leadership, and the will to protect, qualities that the galaxy had long underestimated because they assumed humans were only capable of brute force. Yet each act of courage and cleverness by Mara and her team chipped away at the Brawl confidence, making them hesitate and falter in ways that larger, more powerful species rarely experienced. And as the boarding operations continued, The human forces demonstrated that survival was not just about fighting back, but about thinking faster, adapting to chaos, and using every environmental advantage available, turning desperation into strategy and fear into weaponized focus. Meanwhile, back in the fleet, the main human ships engaged the Brawl capital ships directly, using sacrificial tactics, controlled reactor overloads, and unpredictable maneuvers to disrupt the enemy formations, creating openings for boarding teams to exploit. While Mara's leadership and calm in the chaos inspired other humans to fight with unprecedented courage, proving that their value was not measured in size, firepower, or traditional armor, but in adaptability, teamwork, and relentless determination, which soon began to erode the morale of the Brawl forces as they realized that the humans were far more dangerous than they appeared. As the battle stretched across sectors of space, humans faced relentless waves of enemies from multiple species, all convinced that they could crush Earth's defenders. But Mara and her comrades refused to yield, pushing through exhaustion, injury, and fear, each encounter teaching them more about alien tactics and how to turn them against their opponents. While the Brawl and their allies began to understand that underestimating humans was a grave error, because their small numbers hid the precision, cunning, and unpredictability of a species that had survived millennia in an environment designed to kill. A species that did not fight for conquest but for survival, and which wielded intelligence and ingenuity as lethal weapons. Through fire, smoke, explosions, and the cries of combat, Mara emerged as both a warrior and a symbol of human resilience, moving from ship to ship, corridor to corridor, turning near certain death into tactical victories, proving that the galaxy's belief in human weakness was entirely wrong, and that when humans fought, they did not rely on simple strength or advanced technology alone, but on creativity, instinct, teamwork, and the ability to endure, survive, and strike back with devastating precision, all qualities that had been developed over generations of living on a planet that punished weakness and rewarded adaptability, which meant that every human soldier became a deadly variable that no enemy could fully predict or counter. As the human forces slowed the Brawl advance, rescued civilians, and destroyed key enemy assets, the galaxy began to witness the true meaning of Deathworlder strength. And Mara herself became a symbol not of recklessness but of disciplined, intelligent, and unstoppable force, showing that even when surrounded, outnumbered, and outgunned, humanity could turn chaos into victory, fear into opportunity, and desperation into strategy. And as the Brawl realized that they could not simply overwhelm humans with brute force, the tides of battle shifted, not because humans had suddenly become more numerous or powerful, but because they had embraced every lesson learned from survival on their harsh homeworld, using intellect, courage, and unyielding determination as weapons, reshaping the battlefield and proving that even a small species could influence the outcome of a galaxy-wide war. The struggle continued for days, with Mara leading boarding operations, advising fleet commanders, and inspiring soldiers with her calm courage, her presence turning ordinary humans into warriors capable of facing impossible odds. And with each victory, no matter how small, the Brawl Dominion and their allies began to retreat, not out of defeat alone, but out of fear of a species that refused to be conquered, a species whose very existence was a challenge to the arrogant assumptions of the galaxy. And by the end of this brutal and exhausting campaign, it became clear that humans had not only survived, but had sent a message to every alien species watching: underestimate us at your peril, for we are forged by worlds that would kill lesser beings, trained by necessity and guided by the unbreakable will to survive, fight, and protect what is ours, turning the so-called weakness of small numbers into a weapon. the vulnerability of simple ships into clever traps, and the raw unpredictability of humans into a force that no alien could fully understand or control. And in this crucible of fire, space, and combat, Mara stood as the embodiment of what it meant to be human, small but deadly, clever but courageous, outnumbered but unyielding, showing the galaxy that when humanity fights, it fights not with the arrogance of empire, but with the quiet, unstoppable force of survival itself, making clear that this was only the beginning of a story the universe would never forget. The final confrontation between humanity and the Brawl Dominion took place at the Edge of Sol, where human and alien fleets faced each other in a void filled with stars, fire, and smoke, and the stakes could not have been higher. For the Brawl brought every ship they had, massive dreadnoughts and swarming fighters, their numbers overwhelming, their confidence uncheckable, while humanity assembled every available vessel, from heavily armed cruisers to small, agile fighters, each crewed by soldiers who knew the odds were against them but refused to yield, determined to protect Earth and every human colony. And Mara Hale stood on the bridge of a human flagship, her body bruised and scarred from previous engagements, her mind clear, focusing on what had to be done, knowing that her actions would either save her species or doom them entirely. And around her, human crews moved with precise coordination, the quiet hum of determination and controlled panic filling the corridors as commanders issued orders. Pilots adjusted their flight paths to exploit every weakness in the Brawl formation, and engineers worked tirelessly to keep ships operational despite constant fire, while the Brawl fleet advanced with predictable aggression, expecting to crush their opponents quickly. But what they did not expect was humanity's refusal to play by conventional rules, their ability to adapt to chaos, and their willingness to risk everything in a single, coordinated effort to turn the tide. As the battle erupted, laser fire and missile trails crisscrossed the void. Explosions lit up the darkness, and debris from destroyed ships floated between fleets, creating hazards that humans skillfully navigated, using asteroids, wreckage, and gravitational anomalies as weapons, all while Mara coordinated with other commanders to direct boarding teams, fighters, and capital ships to critical targets, turning small victories into larger advantages, and demonstrating that human ingenuity and strategic thinking could outmatch brute force, even when heavily outnumbered, and each human action, from a daring fighter maneuver to a well-timed boarding strike, reminded the Brawl and their allies that their assumptions about weakness were dangerously wrong, because humans had survived worlds designed to kill them and now survived a battle that could have ended their species. And this survival instinct made them unpredictable and terrifying. Mara led one of the most critical operations, volunteering to take a single drop pod to infiltrate the Brawl flagship, a massive warship larger than a city, whose hull bristled with weapons and whose corridors were filled with warriors trained to kill intruders. And as she descended through space, the pod shuddered under fire, yet her focus remained unbroken, her mind working through every possible scenario, every angle of attack, every way to exploit the enemy's overconfidence. And when she landed on the hull, the drop pod's impact barely slowed her as she breached the ship's outer armor, moving through corridors filled with smoke, fire, and bodies of alien soldiers, all of whom underestimated the small, battered human who had survived countless battles and refused to stop. And her movements were precise and lethal, using momentum, leverage, and targeted strikes to disable enemies much larger and stronger than herself, proving once more that humans relied on cunning and skill as much as strength, and that even one determined human could change the outcome of a battle. Inside the flagship, Mara fought through wave after wave of Brawl warriors, her body sustaining injuries but her will unbroken, and she reached the reactor core, the heart of the massive ship. Knowing that destroying it would disable the flagship and send a message to the entire enemy fleet. But doing so required careful planning, timing, and personal sacrifice, because the core's overload could destroy her pod and kill her instantly if anything went wrong. Yet Mara remained calm, her mind focused entirely on the task. As she worked to set the reactor for maximum disruption, planting charges and adjusting the systems while fending off attackers, each motion calculated, efficient, and deadly. And with seconds left, she completed the setup, the core glowing brighter, ready to erupt, and she launched the pod away just as the reactor exploded, sending a wave of light and fire that consumed the flagship, destroying it completely, and the explosion was visible across the battlefield, freezing enemy forces in shock and awe as the Brawl realized their most powerful ship was gone, taken down by a single human, a small, determined warrior who refused to accept defeat. The destruction of the flagship caused chaos among the Brawl and their allies, who faltered, retreated, and ultimately began to pull back from the battle, realizing that humans could not be easily defeated, that even their greatest weapons and largest ships were vulnerable, and that the galaxy had underestimated humanity at its peril. While the human fleet, battered but alive, regrouped, repaired damage, and took advantage of the enemy's hesitation to secure key positions, rescue survivors, and reinforce colonies, showing that their victory was not accidental, but the result of courage, skill, and relentless determination, and that humans could face overwhelming odds and emerge victorious through intelligence, adaptability, and sheer willpower. Mara, though injured and exhausted, survived the battle, emerging as a symbol of human resilience, leadership, and the ability to change the course of events through bravery, skill, and unwavering focus. And the aftermath of the fight left a lasting impression across the galaxy, as stories spread of the human who had destroyed a flagship, led boarding operations, and inspired an entire species to fight beyond expectation, changing the way other civilizations viewed Earth and its inhabitants, who were no longer seen as weak, expendable, or primitive, but as a species capable of immense strength, courage, and ingenuity, able to survive and triumph against overwhelming enemies. In the months that followed, humans rebuilt, learned, and strengthened their colonies, using the lessons of the battle to improve tactics, technology, and training. While Mara returned to the academy to continue teaching, her reputation now legendary, her story inspiring cadets of all species to respect the power of determination and intelligence. And a plaque was placed in the academy's main hall declaring that striking a human without understanding their nature could lead to devastating consequences, serving as a permanent reminder of the resilience, ingenuity, and unstoppable spirit of humanity, and of how 10 seconds, in the right hands, could change the fate of a room, a battle, and the galaxy itself. Humanity endured, fought, and triumphed. And through Mara's courage and the collective will of her people, the universe learned that even when small, underestimated, and outnumbered, humans could achieve the impossible, survive the deadly odds of a galactic war, and leave a mark that no alien species would ever forget, proving once and for all that Deathworlders were not to be underestimated, that their strength lay not only in physical skill but in intelligence, strategy, adaptability, and an unbreakable will, and that the galaxy had learned a lesson that would echo for generations. Never judge a human by their size, their numbers, or their calm exterior, because behind it lies a force capable of reshaping worlds and deciding the fate of the stars.